Welcome to the Scaling Japan podcast. I'm your host, Tyson Bettino, and on today's episode, we have Rina Sakuraba. She is the CEO of Sango, which offers coaching services specializing in leadership development, organizational culture transformation, and consulting to design and, more importantly, help you implement to make your corporate mission, vision, and values a reality. So, round two, or actually round three with Rina, but for this series, it's round two. And in our last episode, we spoke about nemowashi, which is the Japanese cultural practice of laying the groundwork for decisions and change, which is really crucial for implementing new initiatives like using your service and change management and collaborating with Japanese stakeholders. And in today's episode with Rina, we are going to tackle or dive deep into the topic of Honne, true feelings, and Tatemae, public facade, and how understanding this will be very important for you to have clear communication and, more importantly, effective communication.
Before we start, here's a quick introduction to myself, your host. I'm the CEO of Smart Start Japan. We support setting up a company and back office in Japan. We also provide affordable advisory on raising capital, IPO, and other finance topics. I also run Scaling Your Company that provides courses and sales advisory and digital marketing agency services for the Japan market. If you need help, feel free to reach out.
Yeah, I'll pass it off to Rina to maybe help us. I guess one is set the stage of what is Honne and Tatemae at a much deeper context.
Yeah, thank you, Tyson. So, this one of the top three mysteries when it comes to doing business in Japan, and I receive from non-Japanese business people like, what is a honne to tatemae? And next to nemowashi. So I guess these two, even becoming a global keywords these days. I guess that it's there isn't a word like this specifically in other companies. I have no idea, but it seems that it's very unique to many of the individuals. So Honne to Tatemae, as Tyson was explaining, it's about the honesty, and then being discreet about how you really feel. So Honne and Tatemae, you can say that you use the two faces to different situation, different people, different relationship. When you try to understand the Honne to Tatemae, I observe that a few people try to understand the actions of it, which is the tip of the iceberg of Japanese people, and then with a big question mark, why would you do that? It sounds so fake and sounds so unauthentic, and you're not so sincere to the other people because you seem to use two tongues and double tongues, and you can say it, but it sounds to me there are two different personalities in different settings. And then why would you do that? You could even lose trust. My recommendation is to go deeper on the level of the context, which is the underneath of the water of the iceberg. It's about the social context. And I see this not only in Japan, but in other countries. And then perhaps, Tyson, you could talk about that as well from your experience. I observe, for example, like Korean culture or Thai culture or in other cultures, even in Indian culture. And there's some situations that you cannot be yourself like fully to express whatever is coming up in your mind and then express it everywhere. The Western world, you could say it in time, place, and occasion, TPO. It's something like that. It's an extension of it. And it's a little bit accelerated version of TPO when it comes to Honne to Tatemae in Japan. So you can just understand it that way. So there's some concept like that. I would say across the globe, it's a more or less the volume of it. And then why we're doing it can be different from different cultures. When it comes to Japan, it's a collective unity and harmony. the basic principles of living life in the society. Okay.
And I
So
think
collect, yeah,
that was the really important point.
yeah.
It's normal. That's what people grew up with. I'm not trying to come up with like a super stereotype of like America, but I guess for me, like eating burger and fries, it's just that natural. Like wanting to. There's a better example. It's just not coming up, but I guess the best way it's just natural.
Yeah, it's living and breathing, I would say. From day one that you're born into this society. So even if that, you start going to school and then you start playing with your kids, with classmates in the, playing ground, and that's the collectiveness of unity and harmony, communicated from the teachers and even from the parents. Like you should get along with your kids, and then you shouldn't really express in front of other people just for your own sake, and you shouldn't really show yourself like egoistic being. So there's there's lots of assessments around you to create the social norms. And I believe that that's the same thing for other cultures as well. There are different should and shouldn't. It's just a different way. When it comes to Japan, unity and harmony are a very huge thing, playing a big role in the culture. So that's where you could start when you try to understand Honne and Ta-te-maye.
And I'll give a funny example. So I'll say in Hawaii, we actually have strong Honne and Tatemae as well.
Oh, you do?
And this is the one question that you can get a Hawaiian person's tatemae out. So if you ask them, "Oh, I'm thinking about moving to Hawaii. What do you think about that?" A true person from Hawaii would say, "Don't come. We actually
Okay.
don't want you to come because you don't understand Hawaiian culture. You're just making the land prices more expensive. Because of you, my cousin has to live in Las Vegas now because they can't afford a home." So
Oh.
that's what we truly think. But we'll say, oh yeah, the weather's nice, the food is good, the people are friendly, the beach is awesome. But the Hone is, we want to keep Hawaii, Hawaii.
Mm-hmm. That's a very good example. So, there is a Honeto Tatemae existing in Hawaiian culture. So, I guess that Honeto Tatemae is not something that is only Japanese. It can be like nemawashi. It's a different intensity, but it exists in many of the cultures.
Yeah, it's a
Um,
different intense. And sorry for interrupting. This is the last
yeah.
point. Before we dive into the Japanese concept, I am very glad that you brought it to the point like it's similar to Nemoashi, where there's aspects of it in Western culture, other cultures already. And one more thing, just for the listeners, I think it's hard for Westerners to understand Honne and Tatemae is I think sometimes we get locked up in the concept of truth versus non-truth, and truth equals wholly good, and untruth is evil.
Mm.
And I think by having that strict dichotomy of seeing it only black or white, I think it makes you have a hard time of actually really seeing what the other person is going through, what they're thinking, why they do it. And so when you think something is good or bad, what's it? You lack the curiosity and empathy to understand why someone does an action.
I completely agree with you. I guess that as human beings, we are all assessment machines. So, good or bad, right or wrong. One of the reasons of Honen Tatemae is actually driven from that fear to be judged by other people. So you put your facade for the sake of getting the good assessment from other people versus the bad assessment from other people. And that bad assessment's actually behind that, there is a truth, true, sincere opinion and your feelings about that. Um, at the same time, there are assessments from other people. So I think Honne to Tatemae, more like a shield for you to be protected from bad assessments from other people. That's the other way to see it.
And it made me think of the kuki yomenai or KY or let's
Mhm.
say unable to read the airs. But how does that relate to Honne and Ta-te-maye?
Well, it's so deeply connected, in my opinion. Um, because there's a very interesting example when I went to a global company the other day, a gentleman from Germany, and then he was asking me and then the group, saying that how can I make sure that that person is telling the truth or just being tatemae. Yeah. And then I asked him, what happened to you? And he said that one Japanese colleague came to me and said that that's a very interesting shirt. And then he actually thought that that was a compliment. So he said that, oh, thank you very much. And then he kept wearing it because,
Oh no.
other colleagues and loved it. So he kept wearing it until that someone actually tipped him off. Like, actually, that's not what he meant. He meant that's an interesting shirt, meaning that's inappropriate in a workplace. So you shouldn't wear it. You should change it to something else. And then he was quite surprised that why didn't he tell me that then? So this vagueness is an expression of being polite and being kind to other people in Japan. So it's no good or bad, like Tyson was saying, it just is. So being straightforward and just say what it needs to be said doesn't mean kind in Japan. So by saying that that's an interesting shirt with a bracket of like, you may want to think about wearing it somewhere else. That's reading the air bit that you need to practice a little bit. And it's okay. You haven't really read that air, from the beginning. That's okay. You keep wearing that shirt. That's okay. At the same time, if someone told you that, well, that's not what the other person meant, be curious, like, oh, that's very interesting. So so how can I respond to that? How can I know that's a honne or that's a tatemae? And then be curious about it. My invitation is not get so offended by it. And then you could even make a request to the other person in case the same thing happens, that actually I come from a different culture. So I don't read the air. I cannot really kukyo yomenai as much as you do. So it'll be great if you could make it a little bit more straightforward with me when it comes to messaging, because I'm not trained to read the room like you do.
And also tell them that you won't get angry.
No.
And when people bring you negative feedback, you don't get angry, or else they'll go back to Tatemae and Honne.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And I think one thing that might help someone grasping this concept is, in some cases, actually telling your true feelings, that's actually considered bad here. So it's how you consider truth and untruth, good and bad. There's a different interpretation of a good and bad here.
Yeah. I guess that, the fundamental nuance, social nuance to Japanese culture is that being individualistic over being harmonious as a community is not a good thing in Japan in general. So, it's the right thing to do it. I don't know. It's just the way it is. I'll give you an example. When I was a child, and I used to raise my hand a lot because, my dad was educated in the US. So he used to tell me to raise your hand as much as you need to. So I was raising hand every time I have an answer, like, yes, yes, yes. And then there is a point that there was a grading interview, and then my parents were called by my teacher. And then my teacher actually told them that Rina raises her hand too much. And I think she can only think about herself. She doesn't allow other classmates to raise their hand. So I think that she's being a bit egoistic and then selfish about showing herself off. And that was a total surprise for me. The balance of showing your presence at the same time allowing others to express it, that balance it's very challenging to acquire when it comes to even Japanese people and non-Japanese people. Some people just suppress themselves too much, and they just forget to show up at all. And then some people show up more, and then people think that, you're a snob. So this nuance and this balance it's the most difficult thing when it comes to Honne to Tatemae, in my opinion.
No, I think that was a good way of sharing it, the context for it. And I think I want to take us next to how does Honne, you gave one example with the shirt, but how does Honne and Tatemae manifest itself in business? Before we dive in, I wanted to thank today's sponsor, AIM B2B, and recommend them for anyone entering or expanding in Asia's intricate B2B market. AIM B2B is Tokyo's leading integrated marketing and PR agency. Since 2008, they've helped global brands thrive across Japan and APAC through intelligent strategies, data-driven implementation, and cultural expertise. Their proven adapt, implement, maximize framework builds trust through localized storytelling and drives measurable growth through strategic performance marketing. They're HubSpot certified, seasoned in account-based marketing, paid media, GEO, SEO, and more. Ready to expand? That's AIM B2B. Always forward. Give a shout out to Robert and the team for supporting this podcast. Now back to the show. So, for example, like meetings. I guess we can start with meetings, then negotiations and feedback. So maybe I'll go into meetings first. How have you seen Honne
Yeah.
and Ta-te-maye manifest in meetings with Japanese?
Well, you can take it into a business context, like, performance management, that, managers having assessment meeting with your team members. And this Honne to Tatemae comes into a huge topic here. And I coach many clients and who have non-Japanese team members, and the leaders are Japanese leaders, and vice versa. Most of the Japanese leaders really struggle to give straightforward feedback to their team members. So they tend to make the message ambiguous as possible and vague as possible, and hoping that the other person will read the room and get it, and they don't.
Yes. If the listeners, if it's you're listening to the audio, my face is like crunching at the moment. But please continue.
Yeah. So it's very interesting. So the way Honne to Tatemae works in Japanese, and people call it high contextual culture. What does it mean? Meaning that there is a higher expectation for the listener to suspect and read between the lines and more than the speaker. Whereas that in other cultures, it's up to the speakers to manage the expectations of the listener. So there is more, higher weight on the speaker to be responsible to get the message across. In Japanese culture, it's up to the listener. So you need to be a good listener to understand it. So there's a unconscious expectations for the listener. So when the leader is in that mindset, they say certain things, and unconsciously hoping the listener, who is in this case team member, to suspect and read between the lines, like, okay, maybe when he said that, probably that I could be more effective in that project. Oh, does that mean that I could have set the deadline earlier? Or I could have prepared the data more accurately. Or did he mean about that? So leaders expectations for the team members to figure things out, rather than, okay, don't make me say that, one by one. There's an expectation like that. It works many of the times between the Japanese manager and the Japanese team members. At the same time, I can assure you, there's lots of misunderstandings happening there as well. So there is a pitfall of Honne to Tatemae as well, that since the people expect too much the other person to suspect it, there are lots of unspoken biases and assessments and perceptions and misunderstandings are never being articulated outside. So it's a misunderstanding over misunderstanding happening. So that's a big pitfall of Honne to Tatemae. and not having a straight talk between the two people. So
And no,
I guess that's a business scene that I can think of.
yeah, no, it's very interesting where or at least my understanding is of the West, the onus is on the speaker to communicate clearly.
Mhm.
But in Japan, sometimes the onus is on the listener.
Yes.
And there's actually one question I really want to ask is I guess in the Japanese context, what are some ways of actually, so let's say you're in the situation where you actually don't understand. You don't, let's say you can't read, or it's really difficult for you to read the air. I think you gave one technique of using, or I guess in this case, this person just tell me directly. In my culture, you can use that. But what if I have a Japanese staff member and let's say I'm the country manager, there's a manager and a Japanese employee. And there that employee is, like I guess level one, I'm level 3 or 4, and that level one person is struggling. What tips can I give them, a Japanese person, when there
Yeah.
is communication gaps?
Yeah. So my advice, if you could go back to the previous episode about nemawashi, I guess that you asked me a really good question, that how can you create a safe place for that person to be more authentic, was it's related to this question as well. One thing you can do is just get them out of the usual business setting. So you can just ask them for lunch. You could ask, barbecue over the weekend. So that context of professional setting, um, switch on the Honne and Ta-te-maye for many of the Japanese people. So if you pull them out of that context to try to have a relationship differently, people tend to open up more freely. So if you have someone who is quite resistant to open up in a business setting, try to have a different relationship in a different setting. And then ask questions about themselves, not asking about what they do daily. It's about, like, what do you believe in? What are you passionate about doing? What is it that you like doing, or what is it that you don't like doing? And how would you like to show up differently at work? What does it really matter for you personally? So you ask lots of questions about who they are. It's not about what they are, because in a work setting, you tend to ask lots of questions about the what you do. And then people immediately put on their shield as quickly as possible and then go into a Honne and Ta-te-maye mode. So take them to a different setting and try to have a different relationship, and then have a more relaxing conversation about who they are. And that will massage a little bit of that person to start speaking more out of their sincerity, their authentic being.
Guess in some cases is the elements of the answer for it. But let's say I have a Japanese manager who is very resistant, or their answer is that my staff members should just get it. They should just get it. It's not my responsibility. They need to get it. How would you, I guess, help change their mindset?
Well, first of all, you need to give feedback to the HR as soon as possible, because if that person is managing the different multinational team members, that means that manager should be more equipped with more low contextual communication, not be based on the Honne to Tatemae more Japanese way of doing. So that person's capability needs to be built and expanded as soon as possible, if that person remains in that position to look after different team members from different contexts. So my advice is to give if you have a chance for an open conversation to give feedback to that manager, it's great. So just as be candid as possible and give that feedback that, I would prefer to have a more low contextual, say what you think kind of culture. And I feel uncomfortable to be relied on for me to read the room and then have a communication, and I feel it's ineffective. So if there's a chance for you to give feedback to that manager, and that manager is open to feedback, please do. I encourage you that. If that person is resistant to feedback, and you can involve HR and then have HR to facilitate a conversation to hear what team members think about, and then how that way of being as a leader and it is working for the team or not. I guess that, it may be working for some people, it may not be working for other people. At least that that what's not working, what's working to serve as a leader is the very important thing. So I invite everybody to not to be afraid of raising it, and then sharing your feedback, and then for someone who is the receiver of that feedback, be mindful that you're not managing the monocultural team. You are managing a diverse team, and putting aside the nationalities, you may be managing even different generations now, even they're coming from Japan. They're different beings. So be curious and be open. And then, my recommendation is just ask them again, what is serving you best to effectively work, with the team and with me, and then can you make a request? So that conversation is absolutely crucial.
Thanks for sharing that. And I wanted to go back to the meeting context. So in terms of meetings, I would say, let's say group meetings, or let's say, before we go into sales some more, like let's say an internal meeting, a leadership team meeting. What are some ways that maybe Honne and I guess especially Tatemae manifest in a leadership team meeting internally?
Yeah, so it does a lot. It shows a lot. I had chances to sit in a pretty senior leadership meetings and of Japanese companies, and there are only maybe 2 out of 20 people speaking up, and then rest of the 18 people just dead silent and then never speak. And that's a really huge role modeling behavior of Honne and Ta-te-maye, because there's the CEO in the room, and there's someone, maybe your rivals are there, so you can already speak up and say stupid things. So that's a very typical way to observe the Honne and Ta-te-maye in the room. And I would say that that's not a very effective way to make the most of the time. When I do an interview with most of the participants, they don't think that's the best way to do it. I can assure you that. I would say most of them, or even all of them, think that that shouldn't be the way it is. We senior leaders, 20 of them sitting together and then without saying anything. Do you think that's effective? Their answer is definitely not. Okay. So it's not working. But at the same time, they don't know how to raise it without feeling stupid, without feeling inadequate, without feeling judged by other people. My recommendation is to create a communication charter together with a group of the members. So what I usually do is that, sometimes that, we are pulled in as coaches that, conversations are not happening in the room. So can you help us? And surely it's not happening. So we invite most of them, but at the same time, they just don't really have the muscles to speak up, because that's not the norm. Usually I started off like, let's create a communication charter so that we can start we can take the courage to have a different conversation together. So communication charter is something like, be courageous to speak up even twice a meeting, or use the I language rather than the they language or we language. So it's basic like that. Or you can have the head language like, excuse me, can I speak up? Or, you can come up with any comfortable communication charters, more like a guidelines or ground rules among the team. that consensus is itself is a collective ground rules that you create for the team and not for yourself. So that that makes the Japanese team members feel more comfortable to be abide by the ground rules
Gotcha.
created by the
Gotcha.
collective, not by yourself. So communication chatter may be one thing, but I see lots of tendencies like that, especially if there's a senior in the room and then immediately that Honne to Ta-te-maye switch gets turned on.
Interesting. I guess not leveraging or Japanese wantingness to follow the rule to more effectively communicate with their true feelings. Yeah, I like it. And how about, so let's go from an internal to more of an external, let's
Mm-hmm.
say in a negotiation setting between two companies.
Yeah, so right now I have one project that I'm starting soon, and it's a very interesting one. It's about sales as coaches. So I'm training sales to be more coaching like sales people. And the reason why this company is so advanced in converting sales, not from the sake of selling things to a more coaching way of selling activity, is because that's what the clients want. You know, they don't want to be told what to do. They're looking for a trusted advisor, trusted partners to have a different conversation so that, they can shed more lights on their blind spots and understand like, that's the real pain for us. And that's why that, I want to partner up with you. So it's a different relations that, clients are really aspiring for. So I'm training the sales to be more coaching sales. And how I see Honne to Ta-te-maye comes into a hindrance sometimes is that, it's a very superficial, it can be very superficial conversations when you really stick to Tatemae, like from both ends. It sounds like, what do you think about this? Like, oh, I'll get back to you. Okay. Okay, so you get back to me, and then nobody gets back to you. And then you send an email like, I'm just wondering, when are you coming back to me? And then they say, oh, I've been very busy. And let me get back to you. Okay, I'll wait for you then. So it's a very superficial Tatemae to Tatemae conversation going
Mm,
on, and then the business not going anywhere until that you take the guts and then say like, can we just jump on the call, and I would love to have, a little bit deeper conversation, and are you up for it? And if you could invite the client over again, and then you meet with them where they are, like, I'm just curious, I observe these correspondences back and forth. I'm sorry to say this, but it's my perception that this is not going anywhere. And I really want this to happen between us. And I want your partnership hand in hand with mine. And how can I serve you? Tell us your real feelings. I'm here for you. I think that's the really good balance between Honne to Ta-te-maye. So you can do so much of Tatemae, but you cannot do like Tatemae all the way.
mm.
Tatemae is just a facade. But when it comes to really getting things rolling, getting things done, you definitely need to bring in Honne. So it's the muscle, I guess, that, most of the Japanese people are lacking how to tell Honne, and people are more equipped with telling Tatemae. So that balance is sometimes quite imbalanced.
So I think you gave a lot of good examples of explaining to people when they do tatemae, these are some of the impacts of it. Also, from the other end, trying to get the leader to understand why people do tatemae. And this is kind of a funny question, but is there any physical cues that someone might be speaking tatemae?
So first of all, there is a, when it comes to physical, you can see that this person is not concentrated anymore. So when it comes to Tatemae, people will tend to look away,
Hmm.
drift off, becoming a little bit of aloof, not concentrated, not
I
focused.
see.
So you can see the body language, like, they're not looking at you in your eyes. They're going off. Maybe they're just touching their computers. Or they're looking at the clocks. Or they start fidgeting. So you can tell, like, their presence is not here anymore.
Gotcha.
Emotionally, maybe that that passion is lost, or their resolution, a feeling of resolutions, like like really focus and then getting things done is somehow like lifted off, like, oh, where did it go? So that emotion is kind of like uninterested feelings started drifting off, you know and
Yeah.
language, they started like scratching the surface. So Tatemae language, like scratching the surface, like, oh, I'll get back to you. And not necessarily the commitment to XYZ date. Or let me talk to my superior. Who is that person? And by when are you coming back to me? And what are you going to talk to him about or her about? And so without tangible details, and then they say some, scratching the surface expressions like, I'll get back to you. Let me talk to my superior. I need some time to think about. It sounds great. Let me get back to you. These are tatemae languages that you have an antenna to, like, to really capture that. Ah, okay, so that's a tatemae.
No, those are great examples. When you notice someone's trying to escape
Yeah.
and they're throwing whatever they can, like, like you're running away. I'll knock down the shelf. I'll do whatever I can to just get you away. Just go away. But I
Yeah.
won't tell you just go away.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
No, I've experienced that as well. It's like, oh, you're going to talk to your boss, but what is important to your boss? Or sometimes I am not, I wouldn't say pushy, but I would say I want to try to get down to the core. And sometimes people finally just say, like, sorry, we just don't have the budget.
Yeah.
And by being persistent in trying to discover what the Hone is, the person may just reach a point where it reaches a point where they know if they continue to do Tatemae, they will offend the other person. And so they'll finally just say the Hone.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And it sounds a bit troublesome that, you have to keep digging and until that, they're pushed to the corner to be transparent for the first time. Um, and don't get so offended that, that happens because they're not trying to fool you or anything. It's just that, they're trying to be very polite. And they don't have a muscle and practice to be very sincere about that, because that's a very rude thing to do in many of the Japanese context. My advice is to share your experience that something is going on here. I don't know what it is, but something is going on here, and can I ask what it is about? So, for example, like, I use lots of coaching techniques in my sales closing. And with some clients, they keep waving to the right, to the left, and then we had like 5 meetings, and then for what? Every time it's a repeat of same questions and same conversations, and then they say that I'll get back to you. So, and I saw a pattern. So at the fifth session, I actually, took a pause and saying that, can I just take a pause and then to share with you my experience, my observation for the past 4 sessions. And we talked about this, and then you said you will get back to me. And I didn't ask that, by when. So I see there's some pattern here. It's no good or bad on any of that side. It's just that, it's about time for us to have different conversation. What's really happening right now on your side? And, that created a little bit of a surprise on my client's end. And there was a pause. And then eventually they started saying like, I'm sorry that we did repetitive conversations with you previously. We're struggling to get a buy-in from CEO. We really want to do this. We just don't know how to talk to our CEO and how to get his buy-in, get him signed, and get him, support this program. So it's going in the loop in our head. So that's why we keep coming back. So can you help us to convince our CEO? That was the request after 4 sessions, and I took a plunge and then asked, like, hey, it's not going anymore. Tatemae is not going anywhere. So let's be real. Let's go Honne to talk about it. So that was an aha moment for me and then my client, like, okay, so that's the real reason that I can help you with. I can help you to do nemawashi with your CEO. I can prepare you for that. And then we got that account in the end. So
Nice.
having that, Honne to Tatemae conversation, and then be bold and courageous sometimes, that if you see a pattern of Tatemae looping in, be bold to say that that's the observation and experience you have. And then that could take the different turn in a conversation.
We finally figured out what was. It's not that they had to think more about it. The core issue is they actually didn't know how to bring it up.
Yes.
And it wasn't an issue with your service. It wasn't an issue with how you presented it. It was simply they didn't know how to, I guess, do the nemawashi internally.
That's right. That's right.
So listen to the episode on nemawashi if you haven't yet. Rina as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're really connected.
And one thing I like to do is I also, when I talk with clients, after the first meeting, I try to get them to gauge how well their Japanese champion actually understands nemawashi.
Mm.
And if I get the sense that they don't, then the first meeting will change from, or the second meeting will focus more on how do we communicate it. So rather than, and so I think that's one technique you can do is by asking questions, them not giving you an answer will actually answer your question that maybe they do need help.
Yeah, I like that. It's more relationship first, and
Yeah,
then
exactly.
yes, having Honne comes out.
And I think the issue that many foreigners have is they think it's an issue of logic. Like I just need to logically explain this better. They're not getting it. And sometimes you get so focused on the logic of why they should use it. It's you kind of lose sight of how they can communicate it. You lose
Mm.
sight of that.
Yeah, so true. It's more emotional aspect of it.
It's like the dance. I
Yeah, exactly.
think you have covered this, but I think it's something it'll be interesting to hear again. But what are some methods you use for teaching people how to gently encourage the expression of Hone?
Yeah, that's a good question, especially that when you said that without over pressurizing the other person, because usually tatemae is for the good deeds and intentions and not for the bad intentions. Just ask curious questions, and my technique is that first of all that share your experience, share your observation without attachment to your assessments. And this is one of the techniques that you can learn from coaching as well. As coaches, we don't share our biases, our assessments. We share our observation and experiences. So you could just say that let's take one example, like the other time. I sense that the client was not saying from the true heart, as to what was really going on inside of him, right? So I felt it physically,
Mm.
and it's not logical, but I felt it. I observe his physiques, like you're saying, like he's gets contracted whenever that there's a emotion come up. Like he says, nothing is here, nothing is happening in me. I'm okay. There's certain language that I observe that, whenever he gets contracted in physically, and he says that I'm okay. So there's some correlations between them. Some patterns are coming up. So what I said that, don't get me wrong that I say this, it's just my observation. Can I share with you? So ask for permission.
Mm.
And usually they say yes. They don't say no. So can I share with you my observation? They say yes. And I observe whenever you say I'm okay, I saw your body curled up a little bit and then contracted around your neck and then shoulder muscles, and you look down. And it's not good or bad. I saw some patterns and correlation there, and it's my observation. I'm curious what's inside of you happening there. So be curious and ask a question. And if you take this into a sales meeting or a negotiation meeting, it's the same thing. So if you see some pattern and then you feel like, scratching the surface is going on, what's really happening there? Take a pause and then ask for permission. Like, hey, this is a second meeting that we're doing this. And then I may sound rude, but can I just share with you my observation and then see what's your experience so far? And they probably say, yes, please go ahead. And you can say that, over the course of the two meetings, I realized that we talk about A, and then and there's a B, and then we're not going to C, and there's some pattern here, and there's a and then B, and then we don't really hold each other accountable to proceed to C or D. And then there's some missing conversation around accountability.
Mm.
That's my observation. I just wonder what stops us to have an accountability conversation here. So you see, you share your experience and invite other people to jump onto this topic with curiosity. I'm just wondering. I'm not blaming anyone. I'm not blaming the other person that, you should be more responsible. I should be more responsible. It's just that, how can we make this more accountable place here so that we can move forward? So just invitation to have a different conversation is always an effective way to have a different relationship and conversation with out of Honne, not Tatemae with the other person.
And I think a lot of the listeners can probably relate to this. It gets to the second meeting. And could you clarify what you mean by accountability?
Yeah, so accountability meaning, in my opinion, is a partnership. So it's not about the client is superior than the other party or vice versa. It's about, what is it? What is my domain of specialty that I can bring onto the table that the other person expects me to do by XYZ date? Have you talked about them? Have you laid down the tangible milestones for you to have a clarity that, okay, so until the next time that I meet this person, I know what I'm supposed to do. And so that the other person knows what they're supposed to do. That's accountability I'm talking about. There's so many meetings that, accountability conversation is missed out. And
Mm.
then they say like, okay, great. Thanks everyone, everybody. Great meeting. Bye. And then until the
What's
next time everybody comes out,
yeah.
nothing has been done.
And like what's happening next meeting again? When are we meeting next time? You just
That's right.
come out of a trance and realize you don't know where you are.
Yeah. So my recommendation is to have a accountability conversation with your
Mm.
clients as well, not only your team members.
Cool. Thank you for clarifying that. And so I guess the takeaways today, I guess from my end, is understanding that try to avoid having a black and white sense of, let's say, good or bad, truth and untruth for the Japan context, because there's no ill will for Tatemae. Or
That's right.
majority of the time, there's no ill will for Tatemae. And it's, let's say, they're not. the odds of you meeting someone manipulating you through Tatemae consciously is pretty much none. I can't say 100%, but pretty much none.
Yeah, that's a different issue rather than Honne and Ta-te-maye.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
It's about the distrust or lack of reliability topic. But yeah, you're right, Tyson. I think Honne and Tatemae is out of the being nice and being kind and considerate and it's really out of sense of uniformity and then harmony and being in harmony with other people because that's the basic expectation from the Japanese culture. And also, you cannot really get things done with only tatemae. So there are certain points that you need to get down to honne for sure. And when you reach to that timing, how can you create a safer environment for people to invite people get on the mat and then have a honne conversation?
And similarly, with the energy that you use, I guess, as a Westerner to communicate clearly and taking the onus or burden of responsibility as a speaker to communicate clearly, in Japan, a philosophy that will make you do well is applying that same level of responsibility to helping people move past Tatemae to Honne will serve you very well, and you'll be very successful in Japan.
Oh, love it. It really resonates very well with me.
Thank you so much, Rina.
Thank
And
you.
actually, I'll probably have, after this, I'm gonna ask you what's actually number three of the three. I guess you'd say the Trinity of the Mystery of Japan, and maybe we might do another episode on that.
Sure. Thank you for having
Thank you
me.
so much.